Hey everybody, welcome to the Progressivism video. I hope you remember that Progressivism comes out of pragmatism, so the whole part of practicality being central still applies. Right now I can actually see the screen. Remember that Dewey is starting his work in the late 1800s, going across the century, and ends roughly the 1930s, his major work. So when Dewey is starting to think about applying pragmatism to schooling, we're at the end of the common school era. It's still kind of a, maybe not dictatorial, but definitely teacher-centric classroom where the teacher holds all the power. And Dewey, because he was a student of pragmatism and a follower of Rousseau's natural development theory. Remember, Rousseau was the guy who wrote that book about the kid running around with the tutor that would educate him whenever something educable would happen. Okay, so Dewey took that idea and placed it into schooling, saying that a school should help children develop naturally, that schooling and teaching should build on the natural interests of the children, attending that school. So the aim of if you're going to fill out the boxes on that study sheet, the aim of a progressive teacher then is to help the natural development of the child, okay, to make use of his or her interests in the educative process. The curriculum for a progressive teacher could be just about anything, honestly, but they would stress more experiential learning because this does come out of pragmatism, remember. What's more important than the actual content of the curriculum is how a progressive teacher would teach, the method of teaching. Child-centered, remembered, we talked about this in the history part a little bit. Child-centered, as Dewey espoused it, was to use the interests of the child just as a hook, just to kind of get the kid interested and then take them where they need to go. It was not ever, according to Dewey, to teach the kids' interests. That was a perverted version. I was a little liberal on giving you points on the test on that, but you need to know that cold by now, okay? An example would be this. When I was teaching physics, we had a young lady in the class. Her name was Cindy Lou, for real, like Cindy Lou Who. And if that wasn't a burden enough, the name Cindy Lou, her social skills were kind of lacking. She was very introverted, honestly, just not a very popular or befriended girl. So oftentimes she would sit in the back right corner of my classroom and not many people would talk to her. So I would, try to befriend her. And remember, this is physics. So I got to talking to Cindy Lou and found out she raised goats. Not a friend-winning endeavor for most people. But anyway, she raised goats, and I started asking about the goats. And being a physics teacher, you're always teaching story problems. You're always sliding something down ramp B or shooting something and doing the projectile motion, that kind of stuff. So instead of block B sliding down ramp A, I would have a goat doing that. And I started using goats in these outrageous physics problems. And Cindy Lou started talking in class saying, wait a second, a goat can't do that, and started kind of chiding me for my ignorance of goats. Well, that gave her a voice in the classroom. She got much more engaged. The whole class got more engaged because the stories were funny. I used to try to, on my exams, write in the various students. If a student had been kind of giving me grief in class, I would shoot him over a shark tank at a certain velocity, at a certain angle, and the students have to figure out whether he or she would live. But all the time, I was teaching physics. I wasn't teaching about goats. I could care less about goats. According to progressivism, you use those interests only as a tool to teach the content. You never teach the interests. So that's the most important thing you're going to have to know about the curriculum. Okay. Another thing that Dewey espoused for progressivism is that there shouldn't be this artificial divide between the school and the home, that the school and the family should work together towards common goals. There isn't such a thing as, when you go into the real world. Dewey said that the world and the school should be intricately intertwined. A classroom, he said, should be, you ready? This is something you should write down. A society in microcosm. The classroom should be a society in microcosm. What he means there is that your classroom should work as a society does, with rules, with people having voices, getting to determine a little bit of what direction or how we're going to get there. If like right now, I'm sitting in my office. I'm sure you're very familiar with the bookcase behind me. That's the view out my window. Okay, so I'm in the education building on campus. If I said, okay, everyone, let's meet here, and then I said, let's all walk over to the sub, you could go to the sub a bunch of different ways. Some of you might just go over to the river and walk along the river and then cut back near the tennis court and cut back over there. Some of you may take the sidewalk that goes straight through the middle of campus. Others of you might run across to the ILC, grab a quick something to eat, and meet me there. The point is that we would all get to our destination. We would all get to the sub, or get to the understanding of 2-digit multiplication. Okay, we would all get to the goal, but we might follow different paths to get there. So the teacher is a facilitator of learning, and that learning is not artificial. It's something those kids need. Let's say the classroom needs a bookcase, right, like the ones behind me. Well, if I'm a good progressive teacher, we're going to build those bookcases, and the kids are going to learn some geometry, some physics, maybe some art things about like how to stain it or make it look pretty. The lesson should be as real as possible. There comes the society in microcosm. Before this philosophy part is over, you're going to actually read some original John Dewey. You're going to read about maybe 40 pages of, actually it's this part down here, The Child and the Curriculum by John Dewey. It's one of his most important things and one of the easiest to read things that he wrote. And I need to warn you right away, okay? John Dewey, God of education, huge guy in the development of American public education, was a horrible writer. Okay, he was a philosopher, and when you read his writing, it's not very good. Bear with it, give it time. This is not a reading assignment that you should just rush through. I think that reading assignment might be part of Module 9. But it's important that you review what Knight says about progressivism. You read the Dewey stuff about progressivism. Progressivism is very, very important in American public education. The idea of the teacher as a facilitator of learning and child-centeredness are central to the way most, at least elementary schools work, and several of the high schools work. Now, the most common argument against progressivism is the perversion of it. The version that vests too much authority in the child, where children end up learning whatever it is they're interested in. If they left that to me, I would just learn about space and baseball. If I was a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut, actually. So that condemnation of progressivism actually is based in reality. Some people have taken progressivism too far over the years, and that's why we have butterfly units and dinosaur units in grade after grade after grade in elementary school. So there is some legitimacy to that critique. Another critique is, if you're going to be a good progressive teacher, it's really, really hard to do well. As a high school teacher, I had over 100 students a year, and as an elementary teacher, a year with the same 30 students or so, 25, 30 students, all day long. That means you've got to think of each individual's child's needs and interests and how to help them individually maximize their learning and get towards whatever the curricular goal is. That's a very tall order in elementary schools, and I would say almost an impossible thing to do in high schools if you're going to get to know your students that well. You can take shortcuts, but that is a legitimate knock against. I think that is about it by now, but make sure you go back and review the Knight book, and make sure you do the Dewey reading in the next module. And please, I know we're covering tons of these philosophies. Use the discussion board where I've given you space to ask questions about each individual philosophy. I do check it quite often. It's just there's not much action there. And you're also welcome to come visit me in my office. You can see the other half of my office. I know you're sick of the bookcase probably. That's about all I have. You have a good day. Bye.